Have you ever questioned yourself when tuning vocals, or not known whether you were over-tuning them or under-tuning them, or possibly not even knowing which tool you should be using for which job? This question comes up a lot, and I thought that it was time to show some very clear information on the topic. And to do that, I didn't want to just do it with myself singing. I figured, let's get a real-world example with one of the greatest vocalists that we have, Kellin Quinn. One of the things that's really cool about this video is people of Kellin's status, like typically people that have like a couple million followers and have been in the game so long, they don't usually put their untuned material out into the world for people to hear. And it's such a cool thing because Kellin obviously is so confident in his voice, and he's one of the, as I said before, one of the best singers in the genre, and period to me. He allowed us to do this with his voice. So shout out to you for that, and thank you so much for letting us do this. So here's an example of the song that we're going to be tuning vocals on.
You always bring your invitation, a chance to be another me.
These are some vocals that Kellin did over a song that was originally by Conquer Divide, and it's from our series Freaky Friday. When Kellin sent the vocals over to me for this, I usually would get 1 or 2 vocal takes, and he sent about 30 vocal takes with harmonies, layers, all kinds of crazy stuff. I don't know how deep we're gonna be able to get into all that, but I want to show you guys what it takes to perfectly tune a vocal, to make it nice and pleasing to the ear without anyone ever questioning whether it sounds too auto-tuned or if there are any artifacts happening within the project. So when I'm tuning vocals, I really like to have it going through a vocal chain already. And for this song, I'm going to be using Howard Benson vocals because that is exactly what I used on the original mix of this when you listen to it. If you loved how that sounded, by the way, make sure to grab your copy of Howard Benson vocals. Link is in the description below, and I'll be showing you guys a bit about how I use that in this video. So don't you worry, my friends. By the end of this episode, you will finally have vocal tuning under your belt. There's going to be 3 different ways that we go about this. We're going to be tuning in Melodyne, then we're going to be tuning with auto-tune, and lastly, we are going to use a combination of the 2 with each other. But first, we are going to start with Melodyne. Melodyne is the most natural sounding pitch correction software that I have happened upon. To this date, it's been that way for almost 15 years. I think they made their debut sometime around 2007, and it changed the world for everybody. This is not where you would get the typical robotic T-pain effect that you want. You could technically do that with it, but that's not really what it's meant for. It's meant for having a very natural sounding, pleasing sounding, I'm not sure that this is even tuned kind of feeling to it. So without talking too much more about it, let's hop in and see how we're gonna tune Kellin Quinn's voice on this song. All right guys, so let's hop right into it. We're going to take a listen to this track from where it was before I even consolidated everything, but these were the takes that made it onto the song. Let's listen to it.
You always bring your invitation, a chance to be another me. Cause you know I'm not your friend without your peace offering. See these scars, the skin and bone, I'm hanging on by your rope, but you'd steal my last breath and wait for a chance to push me right off the edge. Hey!
Couple of little jumpy things you're noticing there just because this isn't consolidated yet, but yes, that was the tune track. Now I'm going to show you the untuned version of this.
You always bring your invitation, a chance to be another me. Cause you know I'm not your friend without your peace offering. See these scars, the skin and bone, I'm hanging on by your rope, but you'd steal my last breath and wait for a chance.
So one thing I like to note is when I'm tuning, I like to have effects on. I like to hear it like it's going to be in the song because that's the only way anyone's ever going to hear it. So we're going to listen to this now. Still an amazing vocal take, but a couple of things that we're going to fix up.
You always bring your invitation, a chance to be another me. Cause you know I'm not your friend without your peace offering. See these scars, the skin and bone, I'm hanging on by a rope, but you'd steal my last breath and wait for a chance to push me right.
So yes, Kellin has an amazing voice. One of the first things you'll notice here is right around here, we hear a little pitchiness, right? Like,
Please bring your in the
and what we could do in this situation is just, if you're on Mac, hold down Option and just pull this up. You'll notice how many cents flat it is or sharp up here, and we can pull it up.
Please bring your invitation.
Little things like that if you were just trying to tune a note, but we're going to tune the whole thing together. Before I start this, I'm going to do what I always do, and I'm going to open up Auto Key. What this is going to do is tell me what key the song is in so that I can input that data into Melodyne.
Please bring your invitation, a chance to be another me. 'Cause you know I'm not your friend without your peace of.
Okay, so you notice there, at first it said C minor, but it jumped to G sharp minor. You always want to make sure that you let this play long enough, because the reason it did C minor is because C minor and G sharp minor have 6 of the same 7 notes in it, the difference being A and A flat. So if you don't let it go all the way through, you might have an improper reading and then put that into Melodyne or Auto-Tune, and then that will mess up your session. It's something that you'll realize. Now that we know that, up here where it says C major, we're just going to put G sharp minor so that we know. It'll show us the correct notes that are inside of this key, all active here, and we can now grab this take. This would be what I consider the quick and dirty way of using Melodyne. So we're going to go to the pitch center up here, and we're going to do somewhere between 75 and 85% here, and do a tiny bit of pitch drift. Listen.
Please bring your invitation, a chance to be another me. 'Cause you know I'm not your friend without your peace offering. See these scars, the skin and bone.
All right, issue. Just want to point these things out as we go through the process. Right here where it says C.
See these.
Let's restore the original pitch here and do this. Let's listen.
See these scars.
The way that just tuned that was not to my liking, because the way that it's pulling into the note does not sound natural. I'm gonna show you again. Listen to this.
Offering. See these scars.
No, it doesn't sound naturally, because our voices don't work that way. So we're going to restore the original pitch again of these, manually pull this one note down here, and we're going to actually cut the beginning of this note, or we could pull it back. Now we're going to cut this off here. Listen to that.
Offering. See these scars. Offering. See these scars, the skin and bone. I'm hanging on by a rope.
Now it sounds natural. There's a million crazy ways that you could go through using Melodyne, but if I wanted to do something where I'm not taking forever, this is the way that I would approach that. And a simple way to make your notes not sound odd, if you ever run into a problem like that, is to cut off the beginning and ending of the note and only tune the center. So that would be like the way I cut off the beginning of it here, cut off the end of it there, and then you only would tune the middle of it.
See these scars. See these scars.
And that's a way that you can go about it whenever you have problems like that. Now let's listen to this back in context with the song.
You always bring your invitation, a chance to be another me. 'Cause you know I'm not your friend without your peace offering. See these scars, the skin and bone. I'm hanging on by a rope, but you'd steal my last breath and wait for a chance to push me.
And that is a very natural way of tuning a main vocal. If you wanted to go through this and tune it note by note and pull them up, you could do that. Most people aren't going to do that. And this is a way that sounds good when you're working with a solid singer. I would recommend using Melodyne in this way. But anytime that you run into a thing where a note does not sound natural, you simply cut off the beginning, cut off the end, tune the middle of it, and leave the rest of it to just be its natural, consonant and whatnot. So that's pretty much how you would tune a vocal with Melodyne. You could get away with doing this. Actually, his vocal sounded great before even adding tuning, and that's what happens when you're dealing with one of the best in the game. It's not always going to be the case for us, but it does happen from time to time. And when you're dealing with somebody like that, you can make minor adjustments, do little things, and still have it sound awesome, and then just manually change a few notes in there to make it sound like a natural vocal take that doesn't need tuning or was never tuned in the first place. But now we're going to go into a different type of software, one that's a bit more practical. You don't need to be a scientist to understand it. Melodyne does tend to have a little bit of a learning curve. I tried to express in the video some ways to get around that learning curve if you're just starting out. But yes, auto-tune is the simplest way to tune vocals, and with somebody like Kellin, you could get away with just using auto-tune in the humanize feature. I'm going to show you guys some things to look out for when you are dealing with auto-tune, and we're going to do that same take now, but we're going to do it with auto-tune. Let's go. All right, so now we have Melodyne turned off, and the first thing I'm going to do is pull up Auto-Tune Pro. That's the one that I like to use. And we now know what the key of the song is, correct, thanks to AutoKey. One thing that AutoKey will do if you want is it will send the key to all of the instances that you have of auto-tune in your session, which is very, very useful unless you're a Reaper user, because what this will do, if you have a bunch of sessions open, like let's say you don't just have one session, it will send and change every project that you have and change it all to this key. And that, I was working on an album before, and that was like the biggest nightmare I ever had. Never do that. We know he's an alto tenor. We're gonna put this in the G sharp minor because we know that now. And let's listen to just the vocal, and we'll go from 400 retune speed to 0.
You always bring your invitation, a chance to be another me. 'Cause you know I'm not your friend without your peace offering. See these scars, you always bring suffering. See these suffering, see these scars.
Once again, I'm back to that same issue with the see these scars. If I wanted to have a more relaxed retune speed here, at that point it would bother me. So I would have to either automate it or I would have to use Melodyne with it. But for the sake of this, I'm just going to leave it at a setting that I think is appropriate.
Suffering, see these scars, the skin suffering.
But yeah, you're still getting that auto-tune effect. We're going to use the humanize feature a little bit here and see if we can get that to go away.
Suffering, 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 suffering. See these scars, the skin and bone. I'm hanging on by your rope, but you'd steal my last breath. Suffering, see suffering, suffering, suffering.
It's crazy when you can get down to the number of retune speed that's bothering you at, but yeah, right around here. And what I would most likely do in this time is I would just automate the retune speed here because it's only bothering me in that second. Retune speed here, go down, make some points. Let's listen.
Without your peace, suffering, suffering.
I would just add this guy right here. I would turn the milliseconds down in the other sections. It's not bothering me anywhere else. So I'm gonna put that 28 there. Or not, we'll do 32. And we'll also do a 32 here.
Without your peace, suffering. See these scars, the skin and bone. I'm hanging on by your rope, but you'd steal my last breath and wait for a chance to push me right.
So everything is solid here, except
'cause you know I'm not your friend without your peace suffering. See these scars.
I'm having that issue with C again. And to fix that, I'm going to change the milliseconds on this to be faster to catch that note. Let's listen and see.
Suffering. See these 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 scars, the skin and
Man, it's little things like this that'll kill me.
suffering. See these scars, the skin and bone.
Because I don't want it to have that little bit of auto-tune effect. decided to go, you could have gone either way with that. I could have leaned into it or pulled away from it, decided to pull away from it in that moment. Now we can listen back.
'Cause you know I'm not your friend without your peace offering. See these scars, the skin and bone.
And the alternative would have been a more tuned version here.
Peace offering. See these scars, the skin and bone.
But in this instance, I'm choosing to go the other way. And that's another thing. It's all about the choices that you make that lead up to the vocal performance that you want to hear at the end of the day. And sometimes you want them to have a bit of a natural feeling. You don't want everything to sound like it's perfectly auto-tuned all the time. And I think that was one of those kinds of choices that you need to look out for. Now, if I was using auto-tune and Melodyne in tandem right now, I would not do this here and I would be doing it in Melodyne, which I think is a little bit easier. I'm just showing you how I would do this if I had to do it here. And yeah, that's what I would do. Make sure that you always pay attention to the humanize feature. It makes a big deal.
You always bring your invitation, a chance to be another station.
Now, notice when I take that humanize feature off, what it does to the vibrato.
Your invitation.
Put it up.
Your invitation, a chance to be
And there we go. That's what I would do if I was using auto-tune alone and not pairing it with anything else. Okay, so as you can see, using auto-tune is much simpler than using Melodyne, and it doesn't give you as much analysis paralysis. You basically don't have many choices when you're dealing with it unless you want to go into their graphic mode. Not a huge fan of auto-tune's graphic mode. Most of the time when I'm tracking a vocalist, I will track them going into auto-tune so that I already know whether that take's going to be usable or not, or if any notes are going to be too far off. It's a very simple way to make sure that you don't have any problems with the vocal and that they're still perfectly tunable without sounding strange in the song. There are many different types of auto-tune too, with different features. If you're looking for a little bit more tweakability, you know, auto-tune EFX, auto-tune Pro, auto-tune Artist, auto-tune Access, there are tons of them now. But if you want to use auto-tune, it is probably the simplest way to go and the least barrier to entry right now, especially cost-wise, because Melodyne is a tad expensive, but you can fine-tune a lot better with Melodyne, and it does give you a lot more options for saving a vocal. Okay, but now that we've gone through Melodyne, and I've also showed you what auto-tune is capable of, we're going to do a combination of the two of these. Why would you use both of these programs? So the easiest way to do this would be using auto-tune essentially as the main tuner here, and Melodyne is going to be the first insert on your track, and you're going to use that anytime auto-tune feels like it's going off or varying too much. You're going to change the pitch of that individual note so that it works well and it doesn't have any odd artifacts that are happening, because you know that glitching that can happen with auto-tune. If you have Melodyne in tandem with it, then you can prevent that from happening by altering what's happening in Melodyne, and it still has the very sheen and pristine sound that we're accompanied to with auto-tune. Using them like this, we get the best of both worlds because we get that snappy, quick, fast response from auto-tune knowing that it's going to work, but if there's a note or two off, we're able to easily go into Melodyne and change it. And if you go in and just select everything in Melodyne and just kind of snap to the grid and tune a little bit, well, I say a little bit, but somewhere around 80%, you're gonna have a lot less artifacts than when you're dealing with just Melodyne or auto-tune. But yes, using them in tandem is a perfect way to get a vocal sounding natural with the auto-tune sheen. Let's hop in and let's see what that sounds like now. Okay, now I'm gonna show why I would use Melodyne and auto-tune in tandem. If I was just using auto-tune and left it on the settings I was before, I kind of have to mess up an example to show you why, because Kellin's such a good singer that it's hard to showcase this the right way. If I had done the auto-tune take that I just did, but let's say one of the notes was pulled out of tune. And it was here, and I was using auto-tune only.
You always bring your invitation.
Well, the question would be, what would I do? Because auto-tune is picking it up in an improper spot. I would have to go into the graphic mode of auto-tune. I'm not a fan of this layout personally, and it's so much easier for me to just use Melodyne and change it to where I think it should be. If this is where it was, I would recognize that's an improper note and just pull it down.
You always bring your invitation.
And since this is already a tuned version of Melodyne, you can now relax on auto-tune. You can pull back quite a bit on this retune speed if you want to.
You always bring your invitation, a chance to be another me. 'Cause you know I'm not your friend without your peace offer. Without your peace, your friend. I'm not your friend. I'm not your friend. I'm not your friend. I'm not your friend.
Like, I don't like where that sounds there, so I'm realizing I can really back off here because it's already tuned in Melodyne too.
I'm not your friend without your peace offering. See these scars, skin and bone. I'm hanging on by your rope. Bone, bone. I'm bone, bone. I'm hanging on by your rope. But bone, I'm hanging on by your rope. But you'd steal my bone.
Now, you hear how overtuned that sounds when I push it that far to like 18?
These scars, the skin and bone. I'm hanging on by your rope.
That's when you start losing the feeling and character of the take.
These scars, the skin and bone. I'm hanging on by your rope.
You caught that, right? So,
I'm hanging on by your rope.
but then,
I'm hanging on by your rope.
and that is one of the big things to look out for. So you just want to pay attention to your retune speed, how far you're humanizing things. This is pretty much the way that I would go about doing something like that. Killer song. Key notes to remember: Melodyne, you don't want to do the pitch center all the way because then it'll have weird things and it'll start almost sounding like a keyboard. When you're using just auto-tune, you want to make sure that you will make an automation if necessary on certain words because they can catch too fast in auto-tune speed. And if you're doing it in Melodyne and auto-tune, well, the possibilities are kind of virtually endless at that point. So I suggest doing it that way, but that's my take on it. So now that you guys have seen that, you kind of understand why a lot of people would use these things in tandem. I think it's the simpler way to go about it, but it's also a process of how far does your money stretch, right? Like, you don't want to pay for both of these programs if you don't have to. I'm just letting you guys know that this option does exist to do it this way. This is how I do it. It's how a lot of other people do it as well. But everyone has their own process. Some people like tuning vocals dry without hearing anything. I like to tune vocals a lot of the time in the song while I'm listening to it, and everyone just has their own take on it. You know, you're gonna develop your own style of doing the thing, but these are the tools that you need to get where you need to get and to make something sound like it's not T-Pain. We went over tuning in Melodyne, tuning in auto-tune, and tuning with Melodyne and auto-tune in tandem. If you guys want to see more stuff like this, make sure to leave it in the comments below. I really want to start doing things with real-world artists and not so much of just only doing examples of myself or, you know, a band or two that I'm working on. I think that it will speak to you guys a lot more seeing it done with the people that you hear on a regular basis. So let me know if you guys want to see more of that stuff, and other than that, until the next video, my friends, I'll catch you later.